And thanks for inviting me here. So I'm going to talk about a standard known as OGC puck, which the Monterey Bay Aquarium started almost 2 decades ago. And it's a cautionary tale because it didn't turn out the way we intended, the standard that is. It's not tragic or anything, but just so you know. So I work at MBARI, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and we do development of marine robots and sensors and sensor networks, as well as many scientific research activities using this technology. Puck protocol originated in the early 2000s, and this was developed by MBARI with the idea that we would be deploying many sensors, and by that I mean tens or dozens of sensors onto sensing platforms in the ocean. And these instruments that we plan to deploy are very diverse in terms of their protocol and how you operate them. So we understood that there would be some need to automate the integration of new sensors into these platforms, onto these sensor edge nodes. The puck protocol, which I'll describe, provides a sensor description to the edge node when the edge node asks for it. So this sensor description is in a standardized form. So when the edge node wants to know how to operate the sensor, it just asks through this standard puck protocol for the description of the sensor's protocol. And it consists of a 96-byte data sheet, including a unique ID, some optional payload space within the sensor to store more extensive information about the device, and a set of standard puck commands. And there are about 12 of these commands, which are standard, but they augment the existing sensor commands. For example, Seabird already has their own protocol. We don't want to make them redo their protocol. We just ask them to add these additional protocol or standard commands to the instrument protocol. So they augment the existing sensor commands. And the protocol is pretty simple. It took manufacturers about 2 to 3 weeks to implement in their firmware, so it was not difficult to implement. The standard organization that we used was the OGC, Open Geospatial Consortium. There are several other candidates. There's NIST, which is what Bristlemouth is going to use, and IEEE. OGC specifications are free, which we saw as a big plus in terms of getting this adopted by the small sensor market and community. So PUC is now an OGC standard, and it's part of what is called the Sensor Web Enablement or SWE of OGC. So it includes observations of measurements, sensor things, and several other OGC standards. So this is how it works. The idea is that on the edge node, in this case, it's a glider controller, there is what are called universal drivers. And these are very generic instrument drivers that don't know a priori how to communicate with an instrument, but if you provide them with a standard description of the instrument's protocol that's stored in the instrument itself, then the driver knows how to operate the instrument, how to initialize it, how to get its data, and so on. So I'm showing OGC standards in blue. So the first step is the driver retrieves the sensor ML description of the instrument protocol from the instrument itself through, in this case, an RS-232 port. The sensor ML gets read and loaded by the driver out of the instrument itself, and then the driver can use that document to figure out how to actually configure the instrument and read its data, issue commands to read the data, and log it in a standard format, which is called observations and measurements in this case. So several sensors, commercial sensors off the shelf, were modified by the manufacturer to recognize this protocol. So So far, so good. But there are several necessary but not sufficient conditions for a successful standard adoption by the users. You really have to address a significant problem, for example, data quality, and really truly make things easier and cheaper and better for a significant number of applications. And on the manufacturing side, you want to make sure that the standard is really feasible and economical to implement. And there has to be sufficient user demand to make a profit for these manufacturers. So a brief history of OGC Puck. So in the early 2000s, MBARI developed the first prototypes for MBARI Puck and released the first version of a development kit similar to what Bristlemouth has done. And then 2006 to 2008, several manufacturers in the United States and Europe implemented Puck protocol in their firmware. 2008, ESONet, which is a European ocean observing project, identified Puck as a best practice for them. 2009 was a big year for us. The Smart Ocean Sensors Consortium was established by MBARI. It was intended to be a group of manufacturers and users, much like the Bristlemouth community. And we demonstrated Puck-enabled sensors in a lot of places, in particular for the National Science Foundation Ocean Observatory Initiative, which was a big project, still is a project, but a big project. And OOI was sufficiently impressed that they announced, at least privately within the community, that they would require Puck protocol on all of their sensors on their networks. This was a big deal because this was a real incentive to manufacturers. Hey, if I want to be part of OOI, I better have a Puck implementation. So Puck protocol was submitted as an OGC standard in 2009. In 2011, another big year, OGC Puck was adopted formally and approved and adopted. But another significant event was that OOI, facing severe time crunches and other issues, dramatically scaled back and descoped their software. And part of that was to drop OGC Puck as a requirement for sensors. That was quite a setback for many manufacturers because suddenly they had been counting on this as a big market for them, and now it no longer was. In 2015, another European project developed plug-and-work networks using OGC Puck. Several manufacturers implemented Puck protocol there.
2 minutes.
And in 2016, MBARI ended their formal work on Puck. So the idea was we've been working on this for a decade. It's now a standard. Now someone else has to pick up the ball. By this year, there are very few Puck implementations. So here are some lessons learned as far as what we think limits adoption. So you really need a dedicated advocate. And I see that you guys have this already, but somebody who to really promote and advocate for the standard, and it's a full-time job because I did it for quite a while. You have to work closely with the sensor manufacturers, and you have to demonstrate often, like you guys are doing. You are doing the right things here, in my opinion. Publish results as much as you can in peer-reviewed journals too. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, which is kind of what we did with OOI. As I said, it was a big setback for manufacturers and for the community when OOI said, well, we don't require it. You can put it in if you want it. Provide a community site with lots of reference implementations, different coding languages, et cetera, and maintain it. And finally, the big one, I think, for us anyway, was to make sure we're really solving a real practical case that users really want. And someone else made this point earlier. It's not just a cool thing, but something that's really, really useful and will save time and money for users and engage the people who will actually be deploying this, not just the data managers and the system architects. So that's what I've got.
That's awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome.